Okay, welcome to budget meeting for Thursday, December 15th for the municipality of South Dundas. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. Item number 2, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interests and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move along. So today we will be discussing water and wastewater budgets. I'd like to start off by saying thank you to Manager of Water and Wastewater Dennis Villeneuve. Took us on a tour this morning with his staff, with Selena Shane, Jacob Bellefeuve, Cameron Michaels, and Chelsea Fletcher. So thank you, and I'd like to say congratulations to Selena Shane, who's passed her level 2 water, and to Jacob, who's passed his level, or sorry, to Cameron for passing his level 2 wastewater. So congratulations to them. We had an excellent tour with the team council through the wastewater and water plants this morning as we get prepared to discuss today's budget items. So we'll get right into it with item 3A, water and wastewater budgets. Joining us today, we have Treasurer Lachlan McDonald, Deputy Treasurer Sean Mason, and of course, Water and Wastewater Manager Dennis Villeneuve. Go ahead, Lachlan.
All right, thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll just go through the first few slides. Will be a little bit procedural. So we have, okay, perfect, everything's working well there. Our contacts, if anybody in the community who's looking out needs to contact us, our contact information is there. Furthermore, if you need information, council and mayor and deputy mayor, we're available through those means. What we'll do today, we've already taken the tour facility as you mentioned. We're going to go over responsibilities of council. We're going to go through the budget and we'll leave some time for closing remarks. As we go through this, we'll go through water. We'll take a pause if you have any questions that are pertinent at that point. Then we'll go through the wastewater. We have 3 locations that way and we'll stop at the end. And if you have any questions that kind of circle back at the end, we're glad to accept them and have a little bit of conversation there. So the responsibilities of council, first and foremost, our people of Ontario are entitled to expect safe, high-quality drinking water. It is a matter vital to public health. You may, and it's important to note that's not you shall be, but you may be legally obliged to do so, and there will be some training upcoming for that to go over that. And as a member of council, you have an important role to play to ensure your community has access to safe, high-quality drinking water. And so under the Safe Drinking Water Act of 2002, it is your duty to provide good water, to be informed, to ask questions. So that's what these meetings are for, and subsequent questions should they occur. We're always available for that. And Mr. Villeneuve is very capable with the operations of the plant. So there's finance questions as well as operation questions. We're available to you. And to seek input from your experts. Dennis would be your expert in this. And be vigilant, because complacency, as we saw, at the beginning of this was Walkerton, complacency can lead to some bad outcomes. So what do you get for water in South Dundas? In Morrisburg, there's water and wastewater. In Iroquois, there's water and wastewater. In Williamsburg, you saw that there was wastewater. One's a lagoon and the rest are our systems. That was part of the tour today, so you got to see it. This is what we provide. So human resources, what does it take to deliver this from a human component? There's a staffing complement of 6 when we're fully staffed. I believe presently we're at 4. That direct cost is $575,000. And I do want to make a point at this point in the presentation to note that there is a 5.2% increase in wages for 2022, and this might be something we wish to discuss. It's per the policy, and that can be subject to, and that's, I should say, per council policy, but policy is very much your realm, but I just wanted you to note this in case you wanted to go on about it at another point. So that there, $575,000 is the cost, and it includes that wage, the CPI increase per policy. It is a user pay model, so typically water is paid for by water and not by taxation. Water distribution and wastewater collections are fully funded by the user rates. This includes your staff, operations, capital. Capital includes repair, rehabilitation, and replacement. Some of those replacement costs are quite considerable. Development charges could offset some of this burden to the user, and South Dundas currently does not have development charges. So just a quick, before we get into the budget, full cost recovery, how it works, because it is a little bit different from taxation, is you start with a reserve amount in your bank, and this is oversimplified and just an example. You have your revenues come in, your expenses go out, and if there is extra, that's surplus, it goes to your reserve and it carries on to the next year. In the next example, It just shows quite the opposite in that, again, if revenues are lower than expenses, there's a deficit, but that comes from reserves. And in any given year, you will have reserves being either added to or taken from. It's trying to get to that sustainable number. So that sustainable number, what does that look like? We have through DFA, they did a study and supplied by our asset management plan information. Our water reserve target is $1.4 million per year, and our wastewater reserve target is $1.1 million per year. So those are the big numbers that we're looking to get to. Previous council had endorsed, and the current council, being you, sat in front and approved that 4% increase for this upcoming year. That increase will apply to all water systems as well as the Williamsburg wastewater system. We've included that in the revenue projections there too. I'll mention that when we get to that slide, but it's 4% across the board. It's a pretty simple way to understand that. So the logic behind how we build our reserves and what this slide brings is, and it's illustrative, is if say you had one item in water, it costs $250,000, takes 10 years for it to service its life, and you need to replace it that time, you should in theory and ideally be saving $25,000 per year. So that's what the whole reserve logic is based on. So when you take that upon a whole plant and distribution, that's where that $1.4 million comes from. There's a lot of big items there. I believe my next slide highlights some of those big items. It's $32 million for a water treatment plant, $19 million for an Iroquois wastewater plant. Morrisburg was twins, so they're the exact same. It's $850,000 for xenon replacement filters. I believe the draft I had sent you said for a SCADA system, so I just wanted to highlight that those systems are separate. Xenon is for water, and the SCADA is the operations behind it. So that was just a mistype for myself. And then your pumping stations can range in price. So most engineers will say your infrastructure is doubled when you go for your linear infrastructure. So if this is the cost to produce and maintain, your linear infrastructure can be double that, like, your pipes, your standpipes, standpipe being a water treatment, water tower. So that shows you just the scale of the amount of money that is required to fund and operate a great water system. So we'll just go into the water budget now. So I'll pass it over to Mr. Villeneuve, and you let me know when you're ready to go. We'll go over accomplishments first.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So I'll start off with the water accomplishments that we did last year. Last year, we relined our major trunk line on Carmen Road, Bay Street, Elizabeth Street, and also Dundas Street as well. This is going to really help us out in the future. This is the main line that feeds the tower. We've had 19 breaks on Carmen Road, so this was a big project that we got completed. So that's one of our accomplishments. Our other one that we also did was at the Morrisburg water plant. We changed the chlorine system around, so now we switched that to paste to flow. And what that lets us do is it makes the chlorine residual more accurate, more. Before they were fluctuating, the chlorine residual was fluctuating quite a bit, right? And now it's a steady residual at all times. Another accomplishment that a major accomplishment that we did, we painted all their hydrants, or color coded all our hydrants. This is for fire safety. So now whenever they're coming up, they know if it's blue, yellow, or orange. They know the pressures in the system. So this is a big portion we needed to do as part of the ministry. As well as we also, some of the accomplishments we did, we got 100% on our audit, and we also had, on our ministry inspection last year, we also had 100%. Last year, with our vac machine, previous years, we would have had to, had a company come in and hydrovac curb stops when we fixed them. Last year, we did 20 of ourselves, which was a saving of $27,600. We do all this in-house with our own machine. Operation, so let's see, here are some budget items that we have. So this year, I put in the budget, we usually replace 3 hydrants a year. This also includes flags that go on the hydrants. Sometimes they get broke out in the street. So that is a $15,000 budget. Down at the low lift, when I took you guys on the tour, I showed you guys, we replaced pump 1 and 2 in the previous 2 years. This year, I would like to replace pump 3, have it overhauled, not replaced, but have it overhauled. What this will do, it'll give us more pressure to come up to the plant. Right now, we're only getting about 60 liters a second out of that one pump, so this will get us back up to the 90 liters. Some minor capital items that we have a new air compressor that we need at the water plant. The one that we have right now, as I explained to you guys earlier, that it's the head on it, it's just not giving enough pressure on that, so we just need to get a new compressor. A permeate pump, this would be for a reserve for us, but it's 20 weeks to get a permeate pump in, and to get this in right now would be it would be a nice item to have on stock in case if something goes out, we cannot wait 20 weeks to have a new motor in. The other one is a chlorine injection pump. Right now we have 5 Watson Marlow's pumps in play right now. We do not have a backup, so we need to purchase another one. Again, this was a 15-week item to get in. On the next slide, we're onto the SCADA system. So the Xenon, I spoke with Capital Controls. They recommend that we buy replacement parts for our SCADA system. That was $25,000, and all this would do is let us have, like right now there's no issues obviously, but if there was an issue, we'd have the SCADA item on shelf for us. And also the last item on the budget item would be a $35,000 for a Xenon vacuum system. Currently right now the system it's going on 18 years. The recommendation from Xenon itself was to go away from this vacuum system, and this will work on it works on a Venturi system that would actually take away from the vacuum system, and what that would do, it would be cheaper on us. The hydro would be cheaper, and it would also less moving parts would get broken, so when we switch up to this.
Okay, great. So then we'll look at what this looks like on your budget to present. I think it's been talked about, and you'll see it in your future budgets as well, that there's a lot of delay times, and we've been seeing that in any industry, that ordering parts isn't as simple. So for those critical components, it is nice to have it on hand when possible. So looking at this slide, we have expected revenues to be about a little over $2 million. The wages and benefits for this particular, I guess, attributed, we'll say, to the water treatment and distribution is nearly $400,000. Utilities and communications is $171,000. Repairs and maintenance, $183,000, and that is in your the package for those at home. These were broken down a lot more, and you may have questions, and you can go into those when we're finished. Water, I just provide a high level. Loan repayments, so that's for the tower and the plant. They are $342,980. RSL meter readings, so we don't read our own meters. We hire Rito St. Lawrence to do that, and that's the cost. That is a considerable increase over the previous year. Debenture payments, these were predicted amounts based on that loan, the growth loan that we had occurred, and I believe there may be some questions to that afterwards. But $40,000 for Dutch Meadows and Romax is also included in that. And then everything else is on the next slide. So we have sampling. You'll see a lot of these things are similar: professional development, health and safety, our water meters, municipal taxes, insurance. A lot of these items are items that kind of are part of just doing business, and that's why we're highlighting them at a high level. Audit and legal, admin overhead, because there is a support cost from the admin side, so it's a sharing of costs in that regard. We have advertising. We have Aqua at $36,000. And do you want to go into a little bit about what Aqua does?
Yeah, so I can speak on that. So Aqua takes care of all of our compliance. They help out inspections and all our reporting. So, anyways, they're right now on our system. Our SCADA system sends it to it's called Whiskey. And anyways, that data goes right to Aqua, and then Aqua sends that off to the ministry if there's any questions. But basically, they take care of our compliance.
Okay, thank you. And then we have hydrants and truck charges combining for about $36,000. So that sums up at the high level what the cost of doing business is for a water system. So what this would look like over the 2023 level, or 2023 year, I should say, is we're starting, and this is an unaudited number, so take it for what it's worth. There are movements that still have not been accounted for, but we have to present at this point. So $786,000 would be the reserve, unaudited, for 2022 as of, I guess it was 1 week ago. Our budget contributions to the reserve, so your surplus, is $425,000. We will be withdrawing $164,000 for capital items, which leaves us with an estimated we'll say $50,000 at the end of 2023. And that would be your reserve again. The target reserve rate for water is 1.4. That 425,000 essentially represents what we're putting into it. So that's why when you look through that last council meeting, that 4%, it's not just 4% for 1 year, it's kind of continual because we're trying to build to that level in a fair and respectful manner to the taxpayer. This slide, you may tire of, because I have it everywhere. It's just a reminder that the numbers are really big. So $1 million looks like a lot, but it's gone in a moment with water and wastewater services. So at this moment, I think it would be prudent to take questions of council on water, should you have any now. We have myself, Mr. Villeneuve, and Mr. Mason for questions.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Broad. So through you, Mayor Broad, to staff, and I think they can maybe decide who wants to answer, if that you don't mind. So I have a few questions, and I have shared some of them previously with you, so I don't expect exact answers at this time, because I think some of it, like we discussed, might have to come back at a later date. But I guess my biggest question, and one that is a bit concerning to me, is that the tax base has been paying the interest on the water plant loan. So I guess I did a little bit of math from the information that was provided, and I'm not a financial guru, so it could be off by a couple dollars and cents, but the tax base has contributed roughly about $800,000 to pay the interest on the water plant loan. And by 2026, my understanding is it'll be another additional 77,000-ish. So I know that this was done through a bylaw that council previously passed in, I believe, 2007. So I'm hoping that maybe administration can bring that back for council to have a discussion on at a later date to see if that's how this council wants to proceed with having a tax base offset that interest payment. It's my opinion that the ratepayers for water and sewer should, well, specifically in this case, water, should be paying for those assets, but I think it would be worthwhile to have a good discussion about it in the future.
Okay, I'll answer that from a staff perspective, and maybe Mr. Mason, if I misspeak or he wants to add more, I'm glad for him to provide more information. You're quite correct. It has been $800,000 with $77,000 remaining. So, I mean, that's what you're dealing with, probably the 77, because the past is spilt milk, so to speak. And it was through bylaw. I believe that plan was made. It was a good plan, but the projections were perhaps a little bit overly ambitious. We haven't reached them, and that's why. Not only on the interest side, but on the actual side of the growth repayment from fees, connection fees, I should say. Those haven't been met as quickly as we would have liked. That's not so much the matter that you have, Councillor Ward, is that the taxation paid, and as you saw earlier, it is supposed to be, or typically, a user pay model. So if council would like us to come back with a little bit more information, I suggest an info report where we can provide all of that in a summary, and then perhaps a thick debate in that moment with the resolution, or perhaps a change of bylaw to follow. But for now, is that something that council is interested in receiving as a whole?
Any other questions or comments first?
Oh, that's right.
Just on this topic. Yeah, so I direct staff to go ahead and complete that report for us so we can take a closer look at those details to Councillor's Ward question, and we can move ahead knowing all the data.
I guess the question would be, are we considering this as part of growth, or are we considering this as part of a user pay system for the interest?
So the interest, as I understand, was I'll pull up the bylaw and just read it here. So bylaw 2007-57, that $1,500,000 of the outstanding capital water levy shall be deemed growth recovery, and the interest amount shall be imposed upon all property owners in South Dundas based on the last revised assessment roll. So there was a growth component that was supposed to take care of the capital, the 1.5, but the interest component of it was put to the levy through this.
And so through you, or to you, Mayor Broad, I mean, I guess that's going to be really the question we have to answer. Are we going to consider this as an overall growth, overall benefit, or should we be attributing this directly to the users? And I think that's the fundamental question we have to answer ourselves. And maybe we need to get a little bit more educated on, what is growth versus user rates. I mean, it may seem simple enough, but I think that us being educated on the history and of the bylaw and what are we really considering growth? Because I mean, we talk about future growth, we talk about future initiatives that's going to benefit everybody in South Dundas. So it's just something I think we need to get satisfied first is what are we going to consider growth versus actual user pay system. Is that fair, Councillor?
Yeah, and just include those details.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. So then, I guess, as you said, is there any, that conversation will come back with an info report to you, and we've taken your notes administratively, and we'll come back and answer them as best we can.
Councillor Smith.
Yes, so I did have a comment. It makes sense what Councillor Ward says, that the entire water plant should be paying for itself through the rate users, but on the other hand, we already put water up 4% this year. It would have to go up how much more percent this year to even come close to covering the whole thing, and we can only do so much at once like that. So yes, it should be, but
Yeah, it'd be a question that we
It's-
would decide how much we put into the reserves, we put
Yeah.
less, the surplus, right? Questions, and it's
Yeah.
over a few years, not 1 year, so.
Yeah.
These are all details Councillor Ward, Deputy Mayor St. Pierre alluded to. I think we need more information.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And certainly through you, Mr. Mayor, we will come back with an info report to have that fully fleshed out, but it seems, as you mentioned, council has directed us to come back to you, and we'll have that conversation at a future meeting.
Okay. Great. Councillor Ward?
Additional question
Sure.
that Deputy Mayor St. Pierre kind of brought forward, so I thought it might be a good transition.
Yes.
My concern is also with the loan, for the growth part of the loan. It was 1.5 million over 20 years, and my understanding is that we are at $487,000 contributed to that. And that portion, my understanding, is paid through connection fees. So back to Deputy Mayor's point, if we don't have growth, we don't have revenue coming in to put towards that loan. So I guess I'd like to, and this is obviously up for council discussion, but I'd personally like to see ways in which we can try and make up that difference, because by 2026 we have to have 1.5 million and we only have 487,000. So I don't know if there's a way we can make that up, or if there's a plan to do that. The Deputy Treasurer has.
Deputy Treasurer Mason?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Ward. One thing that you should be cognizant of is there is no encumbrance on the water growth at Dutch Meadows. So all of those connections will be going directly to growth loan. So the wastewater growth is spoken for by a separate loan, but the water growth is unencumbered, so we can continue to apply that to the loan.
We're just adding a mic.
Can we start again?
Sure.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor Broad, through you to Councillor Ward. The thing we need to remember is that the connection charges that are going to happen in the future in Dutch Meadows aren't encumbered. There's no loan against them, aside from the growth loan. The wastewater side, we're paying debt charges with that. But as Dutch Meadows continues to come online and the stability of the subdivision, we're over the next, sorry, just a quick total here. Over the next 17 years, we're looking at about $800,000 worth of connection charges to come out of that subdivision. So that will, if that's council's guys at the time that we bring the report back, those will be going towards the 1.5 million, and we'll be getting closer to where we should be. There could still be an interest component when we reach the end of in 2027, but that'll yet to be fleshed out.
Deputy Mayor St. Pierre.
Specific for Dutch Metals and the connection fee, so I know there was, currently there's a proposal on the table, or the plan of subdivision accounts for 3 larger blocks. Is that per unit or per block? So one block may have 16 units in it.
Yes, through the chair to Deputy Mayor St. Pierre, the way we have structured the projection for the out years is that it's by unit connection. Whatever was identified in the subdivision agreement, we've just proposed that into the refinancing plan.
So then,
Which excludes the luxury apartment buildings. Because we don't know how many units are in each of those structures yet.
so through you, Mayor Broad, so when, for instance, if they proceed
Yes.
and they put a 16-unit building up, we're going to recoup 16 times 5.
I believe the number is 16 times 2,500.
2,500, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think these were 2 very specific questions to help us understand growth development versus user pay that very quite interested in getting more details on, and so we can make the right decisions going forward in our budget for 2023 and then future budgets. So thank you, Councillor Ward, for finding and specifically looking at those details. Other questions, comments? Councillor Smith.
Just before we wrap up here, on the everything else slide, I just love how we charge ourselves municipal property taxes on buildings that we own. It's kind of redundant, but whatever.
Deputy Mayor St. Pierre.
Yeah, just on page 23, or that page there was a couple items I just needed clarification on. It says water meters, and what was the other one? Water meters, and yeah, actually had a question on the taxes, so maybe you can enlighten us on what's the 20,000 for the water meters and what is the 31,200 for municipal taxes. So
Deputy Treasurer Mason is prepared.
Thank you, Mayor Broad, through you to Deputy Mayor St. Pierre. The water meter line is for the purchase of water meters. We do those water meters that we end up selling afterwards. We have a cost recovery line for that. That line also includes any maintenance or repairs that we have to call it the plumber to actually go and visit a site. That's charged against that line. When it comes to municipal taxes, MPAC views the water service as a commercial entity, and we have been assessed a commercial assessment, and the water rate pays the municipality for the municipal taxes.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Councillor Vino.
Through you, Mayor Ross, to staff, I'm not sure who wants to answer. Just to, maybe from my own understanding, you mentioned that the Rideau St. Lawrence's fees were a considerable increase over the year previous. I was just curious if there had any justification for that, and what the percentage was. I didn't see last year's budget on that one.
So Garrity.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and through you, Mayor Broad, to Councillor Vino. So the plan is right now that Rideau St. Lawrence has done a review of their current operating costs, and that it has been deemed that over the last number of years that water wasn't really paying for the water service. So that's why there was the increase in pricing. The plan is we are working with the town of Prescott right now, who is also a shareholder of Rideau St. Lawrence. So the CEO, Simon, will be coming in the new year with council to discuss those costs and also look at executing a revised new agreement that will take us over the next 5 years. So that number you're seeing in front of you was actually quite higher a month ago, and we've been doing some work back and forth, and we've got to a level where, although it's a lot more, it still provides us a level of service that if we were to go outside, we probably wouldn't be able to get for this price. So, but there would be more information coming back for council.
Okay, that's my only question.
No.
And if
Thank you.
I may just add to that level, just the financial value, I think was 72,000 last year, so it's 100,000 nearly increase. So it's very considerable.
Yeah, that's considerable.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Vino. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Broad. So again, through you to staff. We had some discussions about reserve funds and the different types of reserve funds. There's the water stabilization fund, and then there's the water reserve fund. I'm hoping that, and I believe it's your intention to bring back those funds for discussion in the new year, and I guess I'm looking forward to having a discussion, a fulsome discussion on how we're going to work towards building those reserves back up, using that DFA study, but also looking at other ways that, you know, maybe through development charges or growth or whatnot, to grow those so that we're adequately prepared for the future, I would say, with regards to assets. So I guess looking at timelines, reserve funds, if we were to change a contribution, I'm getting to my question, so I apologize. If we were to change that, would that then change the water rate? So could we pass the water budget without looking at the reserve fund? So I guess the timeline wise, if we wanted to change how we contribute to the reserves, how does that affect the 2023 budget for water and sewer?
From my standpoint, I didn't know if you were going to go. We can always, like, we are at the will of council, so if we pass a resolution for this budget, we can pass that 4% and then review after. I imagine it would affect 2024, to be fair, and give a heads up to the users, because council has passed that 4% as of last meeting. So my thought would be dependent on how fast we can get that information to you, and I can't see it being more than like a year is a good amount of time to do something like this. Or unfairly, I can't speak to past March, so I don't want to burden Mr. Mason, but I would imagine any actions on that would affect more the 2024 budget.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a discussion we're open to have, right?
And just a comment for everyone's knowledge, we won't actually pass a motion at the end of today. We'll be doing that later in January, February, when we have all the budget details. So if we get details back in between, then we can make sure we include them at that time. But yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes, and sorry, I should have said through you, Mr. Mayor. So
No, it's fine. Oh, no, it's
Thank you.
fine. Yeah, thank you. Okay, we can move ahead.
All right.
Wastewater.
Thank you very much, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Now we will be moving into the Morrisburg Wastewater Facility, and I'll pass the microphone over to Mr. Villeneuve for the accomplishments of 2022.
Yeah, thank you again, Mayor and Council. So this is the accomplishments at the Morrisburg Wastewater Plant. So our staff, we cleaned the biofilter on our own last year, and we built the new drain for the system. We replaced an aerosol blower. We also low lift or pumping station. We had a pump that went out on us. We repaired that pump and had that pump rebuilt, so it's back in service now. And as you mentioned before, I had one of my operators recently get his level 2 in wastewater, so that was a great accomplishment. Some notable items that we that I have for budget here. So we need to do some more SCADA work, just some more. It's more updating on the SCADA work, I guess you want to say. It's like parts that we need to keep the SCADA system working properly at the Morrisburg Wastewater Plant. We're going to need the biofilter cleaned again. It's starting to build the wall on the piping, so we'll have to get that cleaned out. You'll see this on the slides for both Morrisburg and Iroquois. It's UV lights and balances. These need to be replaced pretty much like, you know, there could be 5 or 6 of them go every year, or it could, you know, it varies when they blow, but it's just a matter of when the bulbs go out on. So that's something that needs to be on the budget as well. And then the last one, it would be UPS for the servers. Each server needs to have the new UPS system put in. A notable item is also we need a vehicle replacement. The truck that we currently have is in 2013 and has 270,000 kilometers on it. So we put a budget in for the wastewater, or a truck in for the wastewater.
Okay, great. And to take that to the levy or the water user fees, is this truck will be funded through both Morrisburg and Iroquois wastewater. The previous, I believe, was 2 trucks have come from the water reserve, so that's why this one is being recommended here, just to kind of bounce back and forth. And you see a light note up here saying we do intend to replace another truck in 2024, and I guess there will be conversations on that either now or later. So jumping into, oh, that's the truck. Sorry, I hadn't changed the slide for that conversation. Apologies for that. So moving into the budget, Again, revenues at $795,000. Wages and benefits attributed to the Morrisburg wastewater treatment plant is $89,000. Utilities and communications are $125,000. I mentioned those two at the start because without staffing changes or we don't really have much control over hydro and those, so those are kind of fixed costs. Repairs and maintenance are at $113,000. Debenture repayments at $71,000, and everything else, which is on this next slide, at $129,000. So again, sampling, you're going to see a lot of the same things. Professional development, aqua, we have insurance, then municipal taxes, as high as they may be. Councillor Smith, it is the realization of MPAC and the commercial assessment, as Mr. Mason pointed out. So after this year, all said and done, if we pass the budget as it was now, sometime in the future, the reserves at the start of the year are 1.1 million. Budgeted contributions to the reserve are 266,000. Budgeted capital items are 37,000. So that's, again, we contribute to our reserves, then we take everything out of capital. That way, our target is that for wastewater is 1.1 million. And then our water reserves at the end of 2023 is 1.33 million. So that target of 1.1 million that was mentioned earlier is per year, again, not as a end of year value. And why is that so big? Because you're like, oh my goodness, I just didn't switch. Because you have a lot of big items. So I should go back for the public who's watching to this other slide. So it's 1.1 million starting reserve unaudited, 266,000. I just said this, but for the public, that we're transferring to reserves, 37,000 coming out of reserves, and that's your estimated and unaudited amount of 1.3 million. And why is that? Big numbers. So before going into Iroquois, is there any questions? The truck has come up, so that might be an item, and otherwise, we'll open it to...
Questions, comments? Councillor Reno.
I think actually this, the more I think about it, this might be more of a discussion for fleet anyways, because it more pertains to that, but I'd like to explore the idea of leasing, and I have some justification for that, but I think we're going to need to direct staff to do a little bit of a cost analysis on our current fleet and R&M expenses after X age and whatnot, and try and compile a little bit more information before we can have that conversation. So yeah, I think we might have to defer this topic to more of a fleet discussion. But yeah, I would like to explore the idea of leasing trucks for the municipality going forward. But yeah, I think we should wait till fleet if everybody else agrees. I think that's more of a topic for then.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's a good idea, as well as we can have staff prepare some information to your point about leasing and repairs and maintenance, what they might be, to give us a better picture overall. When we take a look at the whole list, there's lots of vehicles in our fleet, so yeah. But point me in, I do know you're looking at a replacement vehicle because you have a 10-year-old vehicle. Yes.
May I, through you, Mr. Mayor, given some of council's knowledge in that realm, if you have any fleet replacement schedules that you would have, we'd appreciate it to see it from a different lens, because we've been preparing for past council's direction. So if the two of you, particularly in the transport, you might have some of those schedules or some thoughts on the matter, we'd be glad to receive them to shortcut some of our learning if it's out there and available.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure the forum for that, but I'm happy to discuss it, whatever forum is procedurally correct, I guess.
Yes, and not this forum, but if you...
we can connect in the proper forum for you to discuss and pass your knowledge back and forth.
For that subject.
Yeah, for that subject, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor St. Pierre.
I just have a general question for, through you, Mayor Broad, I have a general question for Dennis. I noticed that like a lot of these replacement parts, regardless if it's water, wastewater, is brand specific. Is there a reason why it's brand specific and it's not, we just don't go out for tenders on some of these larger items? So if you could just enlighten us on.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, I would, on this right here, some of them are, like for xenon, you can only purchase xenon for water. And then also on the SCADA system, it's kind of a niche, like suppliers for that. But as far as like valves and stuff like that, we do actually get pricing on that. So and actuators and stuff like that. But we try to go like for like, because once you start switching in your, switching I can speak for water on this, if you start switching valves and stuff like that, you have to change your DW QMS.
Okay, gotcha.
So we have to put in unless we want to send off to the ministry and say, listen, we would like to go with something different, then you have to change your Form 1s, and it's a big rigmarole for it.
Okay.
So you're almost better off to put like for like, and it kind of just makes things. But to answer your question, we don't necessarily need to have to do that, but we try to put like for like, and things seem to go better.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Brad. So through you to staff. So I guess the question I have is the wastewater reserve, like you said, treasure is 1.3 million. We're aiming for 1.1 million. So I guess we're meeting that in Morrisburg, correct? That reserve target?
Sorry,
Exceeding
through you, Mr. Mayor, and
Yes.
to Councillor Ward, that amount, we'll just go to it. Nope. That's 1.3 million at the end of the year. The idea is 1.1 million per year, so more comparable to that 266,000. So we are not meeting it,
Okay.
but in fairness to that question, and I'll answer it later, is we add up all of the wastewater reserves, so it's not just Morrisburg, it's Morrisburg, Iroquois, and Williamsburg, those combined transfers. And I can get that answer, I have it here. Oh. Is 390,000 is where we currently are when combining them all. It's 266 that you see behind me, 116 for Iroquois, and then 8,000 for Williamsburg. So we're not there, but the number you're looking at for that comparison is 266 for this step.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Continue.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move to Iroquois now, and I'll again pass the mic over to Mr. Villeneuve.
Through you, Mayor. We have, so some of the accomplishments we did in Iroquois were, we had all our digesters emptied. Sludge hauling was, so there's no more sludge in the tank. So that was one issue we got done. We replaced all the aers and blowers, replaced an aers and blower. We serviced our UV lights, repaired and installed the new compactor screw. We did that in-house through a local company, which was nice. And we rebuilt both supernate pumps. Some of the notable budget items, again, you'll see is UV lights, ballasts, and wiring. That's like again, a recurring thing. Some SCADA work that just more again, and upgrades on parts as well. The jet pump line needs to be cleaned out, and the scrubber pump seals need to be repaired. Minor capital item was on our UV system. We have a UV sensor. Anyways, this needs to be replaced roughly every 5 or 6 years. This will be their second time that we've had to do this since it's been in place. So it's just that's you know, it's a 5-year thing on that. It loses UV intensity. Over to you now.
Sure. So looking at revenues and expenses for the Iroquois wastewater facility, revenues are a little over $500,000 at $526,000. Wages and benefits attributed to this particular plant are $83,000. Utilities and communications are $128,000. Repairs and maintenance is $111,000, and then everything else is $87,000, leaving us with a surplus of $115,000. Everything else includes here sampling, aqua, insurance, and municipal taxation. So when all is said is done, at the beginning of the year, we're unaudited again. It's $334,000 is where the reserves had started. We're looking to contribute $115,000. The amount coming out will be $47,000, and the water reserves estimated and unaudited will be $403,000 at the end of the year. So again, this $115,000 plus that 200 and some thousand is moving towards that target of 1.1 million. And why 1.1 million? Because they're big numbers. So that's it at this point. So if council has any questions, I'll direct through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Questions or comments on Iroquois wastewater? Thank you. Go ahead, Treasurer.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Mr. Villeneuve for his accomplishments for 2022 for the Williamsburg Lagoon, and I must apologize to the village of Iroquois. That was a picture of the water, Morrisburg water plant that I had on there. That's just a new to the area thing, so I apologize to them.
So, through your mayor, we have our Williamsburg Lagoon. It's just a small pumping station there. We have 2 lagoon cells. Last year, we removed the cattails from the west cell. We repaired a berm leak, which was from muskrats. The lagoon cell, we discharged both sides last year because the flows were so high last year that the water was getting up to the top of the berm. So I contacted the ministry and I asked if we were able to lower both cells last year. We were able to lower both cells. So that's why today when we were out there, they were both kind of on the lower side. And that was, I asked the ministry for if we could get that done last year, and there was no problem with it. And then we cleaned the wet wells. So every once in a while, we have two wet wells that need to be cleaned out with sludge on the bottom for the pumps. So them are our accomplishments there at the Williamsburg Lagoon. Budget items there, there's not many. I'd like to continue on. It's about 50 hours of cleaning out the east berm. We did the west berm last year, so I'd like to do the east berm. This is a recommendation from the ministry that they get the cattails cleaned up. It's roughly about 50 hours, and we're going to do it in-house with our own backhoe. In a minor capital, I just have a small one there. It's just a lagoon measuring stick for gauging. Right now we're using setting up a tripod in that. We're not really getting the accurate reading there because we have to go out into the lagoon and we're stepping through sludge and that. So I just want to get a permanent stick out in each cell so we can get an accurate reading every time we're doing it.
Okay, and what that looks like as a whole for the budget for the Williamsburg wastewater system is they have revenues of $53,000. Wages attributed there are about $8,500. Utilities and communications are near $8,000 as well, $7,900 specifically. Repairs and maintenance this particular year is $21,000, and then everything else is at $7,400. So expenses after revenues gives you a surplus of $8,037. What does everything else have? Sampling and insurance. This one's a little simpler. It's not a commercial building, so we don't pay taxation on this property. Looking at the reserve position, $156,000. Again, I'm going to beat that drum. Unaudited as of the 8th of December was $156,000. Our contributions expected will be $8,000. I almost said $8 million. Budgeted capital items coming out this year are $8,000. So that's $156,000. It basically stays the same, but again, reserves will go up and down over time depending on what kind of draws you have. I did mention earlier, but I'll summarize it again. So we're looking for 1.1 million, and that's what that 4% increase for several years in the future is bringing us to, with Morrisburg at 266,000, Iroquois at 116,000, and this being Williamsburg at 8,000, it's $390,000 on your way to 1.1 million. So we're working at addressing that over time, and I do appreciate this council for approving that withdrawal. And why why this? Because they're big numbers, and I'll try next time to take that reminder off, because now you're informed. So for us, I don't know if we have closing comments, but we're glad to have this the conversation should council be interested in further questions, or if you have further questions of Mr. Mason, or he has some comments, we'll go to him if that's okay through you, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely, Deputy Mayor Mason. Deputy Treasurer Mason.
Thank you, Your Worship. One thing I will add to what Lachlan was just discussing is that with the Williamsburg wastewater system, the revenue line you see of $53,165, we are proposing a 4% rate increase to the ratepayers in Williamsburg, and that will come to a bylaw in the future. But right now, it's in the proposal, so that will come forward if you wish to see it. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Councillor Ward.
So thank you, Mayor. Through you to staff. I guess to Deputy Treasurer Mason's point, so the numbers in the budget, are they with that 4% increase? They are with that 4% increase. And I guess my question is, as well through you, Mayor, sorry, I apologize. The flat rate for Williamsburg right now is $180 a year for wastewater service. Okay. So I guess this is a comment that I would like to see. So we're supposed to be contributing, my understanding is $48,000 a year to the reserve, and I understand that we're working towards that, but based on my dialogue with the deputy treasurer, it's going to take 15 years to get to that. I don't know how much money a 4% increase is on $180, but I don't, it's $2. Sorry, through you, Mayor.
I did do the math, but I believe it's, yeah.
$7. When I think of on private servicing, how much it costs to maintain a septic system, $180 seems relatively low. And I understand we're trying to keep everything affordable, and I'm all about affordability, and I appreciate that. I just think looking down the road, like we had a discussion today, and thank you to the manager for taking us through, but we talked about the sludge having to be removed every so many years and the cost of that. And I just think that if we're supposed to be at 48,000 and we're at 8, it's really low. And maybe we could look at I don't know if that DFA study looked at the rates for Williamsburg. It did not. So perhaps it would be a good exercise for staff maybe to look at where Williamsburg is at and where it should be, because it wasn't included in that DFA study. So that's just the.
Yeah, Councilor Worthing, yeah, so keep referring to DFA study and the PowerPoint, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so excellent comments on that.
Yeah, I
Happy to
agree. I would support that as well. I think we need to get some financials on that. And you're right, Councillor Ward, through you, Mayor Broad. You're right. I mean, it's we got cost of operations, we got cost of maintenance, and we need to try to generate as much revenue to pay for these items. It's the reality of having the small villages that we have, and so yeah, I would welcome a report just to see what the numbers would be and impacts, and so we can plan for now and the future, just like Mooresburg and the Iroquois has done.
Cool. Yeah, so I'd direct staff, Treasurer McDonald, to go ahead and do those reports up for us, more details. Councillor Smith.
So a couple of things. So going back to Councillor Ward's question, the 4% that we approved was only for water, but because water's going up, then that means that wastewater is going up with it, correct? So basically, the 4% was kind of just for water, but it's also having a indirect impact on wastewater as well. So that's why Williamsburg was not included in it, because it's kind of a separate thing, right? So really, I don't know, I hate to say, to be fair, should the Williamsburg wastewater bill go up as well? I don't know, it's just, because it's an RSL thing, it's separate, so is the right thing to do to put that, I don't know, I hate to put anybody else's bill up, but.
I think,
Go ahead,
if I
Councillor
may,
Ward,
Mayor,
yes.
to Councillor Smith, I think my concern is that if 4% was relevant for Mooresburg and Iroquois, because that's the DFA study indicated. I just don't want us to just pass a 4% increase if it's not relevant to Williamsburg. So that's why I'm hoping staff can bring back a more financial detail, because maybe 4% isn't fair, or maybe it is, maybe it needs to be higher. But we just missed out on that in that study. And
It got missed out.
Exactly. So I just think it'd be nice before we pass the 4% suggested levy increase to see if that's actually what it needs to be, or if it needs to be more or less, or et cetera. So that's what I was kind of hoping, staff. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that. That's what I was kind of hoping.
Or maybe the thing to do would be, could you give us a 10-year track record, a history of what the bill would be for Williamsburg for the sewer? Just like I'm assuming that over the course of 10, 15 years, there's been increases, I would think.
To answer your question, let's see what the history has been as well.
Yeah,
If we
to see
know
what the history has been.
Yes.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, we can prepare all that
Yeah,
information.
okay.
We can prepare a scenario where at this rate, this is what it means, and then I think a popular term could be like, how many Tim Hortons coffees a year, because at $7.20, we could break it down that way, just to show like the consequence, right? Because it's a little over 50 cents per month for wastewater from your door delivered, which I do know that's a good deal. So we will come back with that report appropriately. We'll look at the past transactions, we'll do some forecasting to give you some options and see what the cost would be per year, per month, and see where council wants to arrive at through those conversations.
A comment for myself, I think, sitting through the DFA proposal, then reading it, and then passing the recommendation, and now looking at budgets, seeing the equipment, you look back now, or reread the presentation, reread the report, because you can start to link them all back together to Councillor Ward's and everybody's comments and questions today. It takes quite a bit of circular motion to put them, all the pieces together and then decipher on those items. So I think we're going to have a couple hours of work for you, obviously, or more, to create some of these reports, more detailed reports we're looking for. But I thank the councillors for those questions and for the staff for taking willing to move on. Other questions and comments? Councillor Smith?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, Dennis, while you're here, I'd like to hear this from you. So we're purchasing new pickups. Okay, so what is the absolute bare minimum of a vehicle that is required to do the job? Do we need an extended cab, like four-door, four-wheel drive pickup to do it?
No, not for this vehicle. Oh, sorry, through you, Mayor. Not for this vehicle, not necessarily. This one, it's actually the vehicle I'm driving.
Okay.
But it would be nice to have the 4x4, and just because we're pulling trailers and stuff.
Okay.
But it doesn't necessarily need to be an extended cab if that's the
Okay.
route they don't want to go, if they want to go.
I was just
But
curious if it had to be a pickup or if it could be an SUV or
Well,
whatever.
I
Or-
did
or
the
two-wheel
SUV
drive, or-
before, and it just didn't work.
Okay.
We purchased the SUV last year, and I was driving it for a bit, and we're getting called out to water breaks and stuff like that. We just couldn't get the keys in the back, and just in day-to-day services, it was very hard with the SUV. But we do have one SUV in our fleet, and I think it has a spot for it, because that's the person, when they're on call, that's the vehicle they're taking home. It's cheaper on gas, and and they do the rounds in that vehicle. We have to do our 72-hour checks. That's the SUV is the vehicle to do the rounds, but I do think it's vital that we have the trucks in our fleet.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Ward?
Yes, and through you, Mayor, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate spot. I do know Treasurer McDonald was mentioning about wages for staff, and I just want to mention that I think the CPI increase, right, excuse me, through you, Mayor, that is the CPI increase is the 5.2 this year.
That is correct.
And may I ask what it was that staff received last year?
Deputy Treasurer Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Broad. Through you to Councillor Ward, that 5.2 that we've quoted for wages, that is the CPI for the year ended 2021. Our policy says that we are to use the year-ended CPI from the year before, so that's what that is. And sorry, and to answer your second part of the question, staff were given 0.7% on CPI for 2022 salaries.
So if I may,
Yes,
Mayor,
you
just
may.
and then I just want to acknowledge that I think that our staff are a really important asset to our community. A lot of them live here, they work here. Based on our tour this morning, they take pride in their work and our assets that are really important to us. So I would be in support of that existing policy at that 5.2%. Obviously, I'm one member of council, but that's how I feel. So yeah, thank you for that explanation.
Deputy Mayor St. Pierre.
Through you, Mayor Broad, sorry. I just want to make sure, because sometimes I'm not quite hearing that clearly. You're saying that the CPI was 5.2% and staff only received 0.7%?
Go ahead, Deputy Treasurer.
Thank you, Mayor Broad. Through you to Deputy Mayor St. Pierre. The way the policy reads, and with our budget scheduling, since we tabled the budget in December of 2021 for 2022, we needed to use the prior year-end CPI, which was 0.7%.
Okay, I got you. Okay, thank you.
And subsequently for 2021, the CPI is 5.2%.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mayor Brown, thank you for clarifying, because that wasn't quite clear when you said that. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vino.
Through you, Mayor Broad, to Dennis. Just for that report, or for the information to come back for the Williamsburg Lagoon, you had mentioned that we've never had to excavate the sludge from the bottom of those two pits that you're aware of.
Yes.
But, and we weren't really sure when that may have to happen, but I'd love to see if there's a projection, if we can try and think about when it may need to be done and what that cost may be. Because as we try and navigate the amount of money that we need to have in reserves, like if you come back and you say 5 years from now we're gonna have to spend $500,000 to excavate the sludge, well, that drastically changes what we need in our reserves to cover that. So it would benefit us for planning, I think, because it seems to me for the lagoon back there, that would be the only major expense that we really ever would have with the lagoon, maybe the pumps. But anyway, so it'd be just interesting to see if there's any idea when that may have to happen. I guess your level gauge may help with that.
Yeah, through your mayor. We did do that was, Shannon, was that in 2017?
2018 or 2019?
So, yeah, we did a sludge judge in 2018, and the sludge levels were at a good depth. And if you have a proper working lagoon, the bacteria eats, like that keeps your levels at a certain level. So we do have a good, the lagoon is not septic back there and everything, so the lagoon is working properly, so it stays at that level. And we had the lagoon tested, and it wasn't for in the foreseeable future, but we can get the numbers for that. And I think the recommendation was to have it tested again in 10 years at the time. So it'd be 2028 that we get it retested, and we'll be able to tell you the sludge then. But
yeah, it's certainly something that's long ways out on the schedule. But yeah, that was, I guess, more so my question. I guess, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you.
yeah, I hope that answered it.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll make the final remarks unless staff have any other remarks to make. So first off, thank you for the staff taking your time today and all the work in preparation. This is probably the shorter piece, the presentation piece, but thank you. Certainly a few follow-ups to take. I think it's really important. We understand, residents understand, it is our duty to ensure we have safe, high-quality drinking water, like was shown in the very few slides. I really appreciate all the accomplishments that Manager Villeneuve and his staff have accomplished. It really was great to see. I think we were super impressed with the level of ownership by the water and wastewater staff at the world-class facility. The appearance and standards are excellent. Coming from a corporate world, I was super happy to see the standards you have. And I was also pleasantly surprised that your staff members also understood budgeting, and they were talking about capital items and consumables in their conversations with us. So that was obviously excellent by you. You've trained them and talked to them about how budgeting works. So that was good to see. Seeing operations today, I think the expenses and the capital requests are very reasonable requests, and we are adding to the reserves. So I'll look forward to our final budgeting when we come to resolution and pass your budget. Okay. With that being said, I have a motion that council now adjourn to meet again at the call of the chair. Motion by Councillor Vino, seconded by Councillor Ward. Having heard the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, and everybody have a good afternoon.